In this video, we will be discussing the product of powers property and how it applies to exponents. So specifically what we do when we're multiplying terms with exponents. So before we get to the property, let's go over just some basic vocabulary related to exponents. So first you need to know that if there is a number in front of a variable, this is called the coefficient. So in this particular example, the 4 would be considered the coefficient. Then the either number or variable that the exponent is attached to is known as the base. So A would be considered our base. And then finally, the exponent is the 6. So you do need to know the difference between a coefficient, a base, and an exponent because we're going to be using that vocabulary a lot in this unit. So what does an exponent mean? So when we raise something to a power, like x squared, for example, that's telling us to take x and multiply it by itself twice. So x squared is the same thing as x times x. It's not 2x. It's not 2 times x. It's x times x. And that's a very common mistake that people make with exponents. So then a to the 6 would be multiplying a by itself 6 times. So a times a times a times a times a. Okay, so let's kind of apply this idea and solve some multiplication problems. And I'm actually going to start with example 2, and then we're going to kind of see if we can come up with a shortcut. So in example 2, it says c to the 3rd power. So I would multiply c by itself 3 times. And then I'm going to multiply that by c to the 2nd power, which is multiplying c by itself twice. So then I just want to count up how many c's I have total. So there are 5 c's total. So my final answer is c to the 5th power. Now this can be very time consuming, sitting there and writing out all the c's or all the a's or b's or whatever variable you have. So there's a really nice shortcut. If you look at the exponents, all you have to do if they have the same base is just add the 2 exponents together when you're multiplying. So let's use the shortcut to complete example 1 and example 3. So we can just go ahead and add their exponents together to get m to the 9th power. Same thing with example 3. We're just going to go ahead and add those exponents together to get p to the 17th power. Okay, so let's kind of sum up the shortcut for product of powers property. So anytime the bases are the same, you always start by if they have a coefficient, which we haven't seen an example like this yet, but if they have a coefficient, you start by multiplying the coefficients, and then you add their exponents. So let's apply this shortcut to the next 3 examples. So in example 4, these have coefficients. So we're going to start by multiplying 4 times 3, which is 12, and then add the exponents. So 14 and 9. If I add those together, I get n to the 23rd power. Same thing with example 5. I'm going to do negative 5 times 7 to get negative 35, and then add those exponents together to get q to the 63rd power. Now, number 6 is a little bit different because the z next to the 6 doesn't have an exponent. So whenever there is no exponent specified, then the exponent is always going to be 1. So we're just going to add a 1 then with that exponent. And if there's not a coefficient, then the coefficient is also 1. So we're going to multiply the 1 times 6 to get 6. And then we're just going to add the exponents. So it would be 6z to the 11th power. Okay, so let's try the examples on the back. And these are going to be very similar to the homework problems. So just make sure you ask any questions to your teacher if you are confused on any of these. So number 7, they have the same base. So again, we're just going to add those exponents. So that would be L to the 8th power. In number 8, don't forget to put an exponent of 1 with the 2a, and you're going to multiply all the coefficients first. So 2 times 3 times 6 is 36, and then add all the exponents. So 1 plus 5 plus 6 is a to the 12th power. Now, number 9 is a little bit tricky because this time the exponent is attached to a number instead of a variable. So if it's attached to a number, now the 2's are bases. They are no longer coefficients. So we do not multiply the 2's together because those are the bases. So all you're going to do is keep it as a 2 and then add the exponents. So 2 to the 8th power would be your final answer. We only multiply them if they are coefficients, numbers in front of variables. In number 10, don't forget to put an exponent of 1 with the first a, and then add those exponents together to get a to the 8th power. Next one, number 11, you're going to put an exponent of 1 with the 5x and multiply those coefficients because now the 5's are coefficients. So 5 times 5 is 25, and then add those exponents to get x to the 5th power. Then number 12, again, put an exponent of 1 with the first y and an exponent of 1 with the second x. So now we have two different bases. We have x's and y's. We can only combine the x's together and then the y's together. So I'm just going to look at the x's first, and when I add those exponents, I get x to the 6th. And then I'm going to add the y's together. So 1 plus 2 gives me y to the 3rd power. You cannot combine the x and the y because they are different bases. So that's your final answer. In example 13, put an exponent of 1 with the x, and then you can only combine the p's for this example. So we're going to add the 2 and the 3 together to get p to the 5th power, and then just bring down x to the 1st power since we can't add that. So sometimes you just have to bring down an exponent if you can't combine it with anything. Next example, these are all x's, so we're just going to add all of those exponents together. So 9 plus 3 plus 2 is x to the 14th power. All right, next one, example 15. Now this one has x's, y's, and z's. So keep in mind we can only combine x's together, then the y's together, then the z's together. And let's put an exponent of 1 with the first z, an exponent of 1 with the second y, and then an exponent of 1 with the 3rd x. So let's start with x's. We're going to do 2 plus 4 plus 1 to get x to the 7th. Then we're going to add the y's. So 5 plus 1 plus 6 gives us y to the 12th. And then the z's, 1 plus 3 plus 8 is z to the 12th power. And that's your final answer for 15. Okay, now example 16 is very similar to example 9, and the reason it's on here twice is it's one of the most missed questions on the quiz and the test for this unit. Notice that the exponents are attached to the 4's, so therefore the 4's are bases. So we do not multiply the 4's, we just add their exponents to get 4 to the 5th power. Next one, number 17, you're going to multiply the coefficients to get 14 and then add those exponents. So I get a to the 14th power. 18 is an easy one. All we have to do is just add all those exponents. So 6 plus 7 plus 10 is x to the 23rd power. All right, let's try a few more examples, and then hopefully you'll be feeling more comfortable with multiplying terms with exponents. So in 19, make sure you put an exponent of 1 with the second y, and then there's a -1 coefficient in that same parenthesis. So we're going to start by multiplying the coefficients. -3 times -1 is +3, and then add the exponents. So 2 plus 1 is y to the 3rd, and then you're going to add the z's together. So 7 and 6 give me z to the 13th power. Next example, put an exponent of 1 with that first b, and then an exponent of 1 with the second a, and an exponent of 1 with the second b. And let's multiply the coefficients. So 3 times -2 is -6, and then add the exponents. So 6 and 1 gives me a to the 7th, and then add the b's together to get b to the 2nd power. 21 is easy if you remember to put exponents of ones with the x's and then just add them together to get x to the second power. The last one is 3 terms, and don't forget to add those exponents of ones. So we're going to start by multiplying all of the coefficients. So -1 times 2 times 11 is -22. Then we're going to add the m's. So 4 plus 1 plus 3 is m to the 8th. So we get m to the 8th power. Then we're going to add the n's together. 3 plus 9 plus 1 is n to the 13th power. And that's your final answer for the last one, number 22. So feel free to reach out to your teacher if you have any additional questions. The homework will be very similar to these examples.